All right, welcome to Sunday School for Lighthouse Baptist Church. I'm a little disappointed. This side has kind of failed to show up other than... I know you guys, you're representing, but it's just, we were doing so good. Anyway, Daniel, will you open us up in a word of prayer, please?
Lord, thank you for bringing us here and giving us this time and place that we can get it for you. I pray that you would bless this message, Lord, as well as pastors after it. That you would give our preachers and teachers here the words you would have them to speak, Lord. You give them clarity of mind and of voice. And you just open everyone's minds and hearts as well to receive the word that you have for us today. I pray it help us to learn more about you, Lord. Keep our minds focused on you. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, so Proverbs, we're in chapter 20. First I'll read a few verses about the fear of the Lord, because before you can get wisdom, you really need to have the fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is something that I think if you're smart, you would have it before you get saved and after you get saved. If you want to live a godly life, you need to have fear of the Lord, but if you want to go to heaven, you need to have fear of the Lord, so that will drive you to Him. So the first verse I'd like to read is Psalm 34:9. O fear the Lord, ye His saints, for there is no want to them that fear Him. Psalm 115:11. Ye that fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. Psalm 103:11. For as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is His mercy toward them that fear Him. So it's a simple thing. I think it's easy to forget to fear the Lord. I know I do. That's one of the reasons why I'm kind of harping on it, because if I can teach it to you guys, hopefully it'll burn into my brain, so when I'm done teaching, I'll still remember to fear the Lord. If I move a little slower today, or I blame the air quality, I'm frequently not too chipper, but I am less chipper than normal. So, all right, so in chapter 20, we just hit one verse, but I think it's an important one. We should go back to it. So verse 1. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. I think it's interesting, there's commandments in Proverbs, and I'm sure elsewhere, but I know for a fact in Proverbs it says kings, princes shouldn't drink. And, Donald Trump doesn't drink. As far as I know, I think he drinks Diet Coke. And that's wise, because it can pervert your wisdom and make you make and say, do and say stupid things. His son, I heard an interview with his son, Donald Trump Jr., and he said he didn't drink because he couldn't control the level of drink he consumed. And that's common. You drink, and then I guess you want more. And then you lose even more control until you suffer ill effects such as, getting sick or making foolish decisions, memory loss, you can't remember. It affects your memory. That was one of the things I never wanted. I had, my dad called them piranhas. I had classmates. There were only 8 people in our graduating class, but only 3 of us were probably decent, 3, 4 maybe. And then the other 4 were what my dad was called piranhas. They were vicious and attacking, and they were always talking about, they're, going out and getting drunk and all the stories. And that, a lot of times just hearing those stories, which they think are funny, it's good prevention. It's almost like a scared straight thing, because if you want to go out and do a bunch of stupid things, and they always were trying to get me drunk. They thought it'd be funny. But alcohol is deceiving, and it's important to keep that in mind, especially for the young people. And whenever you open a gate to a sin, it could be fornication, it could be, alcohol or drugs or whatever. Once you cross this line, there's always a temptation, because there is some enjoyment. Sin has pleasure for a season. There's some, it can always be kind of, well, it doesn't have to, but it can be a temptation for you later on. I know somebody who's saved, his wife is saved, and they had marital problems, but at some point in their life, and I don't know when, but they had gotten into drugs, and I believe it was meth. And so when they were having these extreme problems, the guy told me he went and, got some drugs, because he's just so frustrated with the situation. He wanted to feel better about it. And he felt bad, but he did get the drugs and apparently must have taken them. Now, since then, to the best of my knowledge, he has gotten off of them, but I think their marriage has been destroyed. So, it's very sad when you see those things. And so, it's always a better safe than sorry. But I know that, with young people, and we don't have a lot of them here today, but there's a great temptation to, indulge in those things at least a little bit. The Amish have rumspringa, which kind of allows them, they're not told to go out and sin, but there's at least some allowance for it, where when kids get a certain age, they're allowed to, experience that stuff, so that, and then they have to make a decision. Their baptism is totally messed up, but they get baptized they have to make a decision. Do they want to follow the Amish faith? And so they make a decision, yes or no. And if yes, they get baptized into their church. And then they are expected to toe the line and follow the Amish church's doctrine. And they're not all the same, but they are all very strict to some degree. There's some merit to that, and in a way we don't let just anybody come in here and start voting and be a member. Everybody's welcome to attend, but their children a lot of times feel like, they just kind of got drafted into this. We have kids, well, they didn't get to choose to be born, and then we make them go to church, well, they didn't choose that, and then they get old enough and they're like, well, I don't want to go to church. All right, well, that's your prerogative. I feel, and I don't like feelings are tricky, but there's some value to making people choose. And so that's one of the things that with my children I try to do. I was like, choose you this day whom you will serve. We don't have that clear decision point. That decision is something that we basically make every day. Are we going to serve the Lord or not? Well, alcohol definitely gets in the way of that. Verse 2. The fear of a king is as the roaring of a lion. Whoso provoketh him to anger sinneth against his own soul. Now this is this is a common sense type thing, but as they say, common sense isn't so common, and it's written here, so we'll talk about it. David unintentionally irritated Saul. Saul tried to kill him more than once, but he was just playing, was it the harp? I believe it. He was playing an instrument. and made Saul mad. And he threw a spear at David, almost killed him. Now, was that something that David was intentionally doing? No, he wasn't trying to irritate or aggravate Saul. That's just an example from the Bible of an angry king and what he can do to you. So, other kings, Henry VIII with Anne Boleyn, he got mad at her. He divorced his wife, created the Church of England so that he could, because the Pope wouldn't sanction his divorce, not because the Pope was holy, but because the Pope, he wasn't being bribed properly. There were political things there. I'm not here to teach you history, but then he ended up getting married to Anne Boleyn. He didn't like her, and she made him mad, and he ended up, chopping her head off. Do I have the gist right there? Okay. Hitler is a good example. Somebody tried to kill Hitler. Well, he was mad. The only person who didn't suffer mightily from that was, and there was more than one attempt, but the big one, somebody took a briefcase in to a conference room, and there were different things, which is obvious that God intervened. He didn't want Hitler dead then. But one of the things was they went from one conference room that was very small to a larger conference room that was much more open. And explosives, if it's open, then they don't do as much damage. Something else was the suitcase was put down by Hitler and somebody came along and moved it, just like to the other side. So when it blew up, the table protected Hitler from suffering serious injury. Well, he was angry. Rommel was involved. If you hear about Rommel, he was a desert fox and he was a famous general. He was the only one who didn't get off super harshly. He was allowed to kill himself. Everybody else was tortured, and at least some of them were hung on meat hooks. I saw a picture of the meat hooks. I mean, you can imagine. You've seen pictures of cattle, hanging. You're definitely sinning against your own soul and your body, for that matter, if you make the king angry. I think an example we can take from this is, God. I mean, Jesus will be king on earth, but God is greater than any king. And if we're the people out there who are making him angry, I would not want to be them. Verse 3, it is an honor for a man to cease from strife, but every fool will be meddling. This is at any level. I look at it from a smaller level because I might fight with people or, get angry and argue. But I look at it, there's a lower level, but it's also a larger level. If there's, if somebody, horror upon horrors, kills a family member, it's not, as much as we feel, there's that word again, feel like it's justice for us to punish that person, especially if our justice system fails. It's not on us. It's actually an honor to cease from strife. And so if there is a fight going on now, so we can apply this to more local issues, whether you're fighting with your wife over something. I got in an argument with my wife over the dumbest thing, and I still can't figure out why we were arguing about it. And I was angry that we were arguing about it. I'm like, this is the dumbest argument in the world. But she was, I'm hard to get along with all the time. So when she is not perfect, it definitely leads to more contention. Oh, I don't know what I should have done, but I definitely wasn't conducive to, it wasn't honoring to argue strife sometimes can follow you from room to room, I suppose, but for the most part, all we need to do is stop arguing. But we have to get in one more word. Like our brain tricks us into thinking that last word. Thank you, Bill. He knows what I'm talking about. That last word is somehow going to make a difference, and it doesn't. It never does. It's like, I just want to say this. And it's like, well, now I want to say this. And so anyway, we go on and on. So what's another attribute of a fool? Fools are meddling, okay? So if somebody is getting in your business or anybody else's business when it's not their business, that's foolish behavior. Fools are always meddling. Fools are always giving advice. Fools are causing troubles. And I see problems with people and their families and stuff sometimes. And I'm not a very, any good thing that I ever do, I know is God, because that's not my natural state. I'm just not a nice person. And you can see that frequently. But, sometimes I feel like I want to help somebody. They can benefit from my wisdom. That's probably just pride speaking. But I have enough wisdom to know that I need to mind my own business. And unless God really impresses upon me that I need to stay out of it. Because it's very prideful to think that you can help others out and fix their problems, marital problems, when frequently there's years and difficulty and animosity and things like that, and it can just, it can cause other problems. So it's something you have to be very careful of if you're ever in a situation. There are many things have been destroyed just by, or made worse by trying to help when it wasn't warranted. Verse 4, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg and harvest and have nothing. You got to plow sometime. If you don't, you're not going to have any food. I find it a little frustrating sometimes when you see people who say, if you're a Christian, you should be caring towards the homeless and all this stuff. And I mean, that's not wholly wrong because the Bible talks about the poor. But the Bible also talks about accountability. And the very simple fact of the matter is, most homeless are fine with being homeless. They don't want shelters because shelters have rules. They have to have rules. You cannot have a homeless shelter without having some rules because you can't control the people. You will have fights, you will have stabbings and murders, and I'm sure I could go find some in history where even though there were rules, bad things happened. I know somebody who was in a homeless shelter, and he didn't follow the rules. He got kicked out. So we do want to be, we don't want to be all, hey, this person, they don't deserve help. And I don't see that in this church. But it does tend to be my attitude, my default thing. That's my bias is this person, they should be working or something. And I truly believe if most people can support themselves, and we have enough social systems that help. Back in the day, a widow with a bunch of orphans might, if they were too young to work, that was a bad thing. But my dad told me, I haven't independently verified this, but I believe it, that if you married a woman with a bunch of children, that was a good thing because you would be wealthy because all those children would go to work and start contributing to the family. Well, that's certainly not the case now, whether it's our fault or the children's fault or society's fault. It's probably all three. Anyway, you reap what you sow, and if you never sow, it's pretty hard to reap anything. Verse 5, counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. This verse is a little nebulous, but I think I have the gist of it. And it kind of goes back to what I said before. Be careful offering advice to people. If somebody wants to solicit your advice, that's where, okay, now maybe you can offer some very carefully. But counsel is something that you have to go get, right? You can't counsel somebody if they don't want it. How well does that work? You know, we do this, we try with our kids, we're indoctrinating them essentially. Some people might say brainwashing them, but that's because we need to teach them. But ask any teacher, if the person doesn't want to learn, how much are they going to learn? Not very much. They might learn a little just because they can't help it. But so a man of understanding will draw it out. So I think of the well, a deep water, and taking a bucket and drawing water up from the well and actually going after it. And then a proverb that's not explicitly in the Bible is, silence is golden. We talk too much. I know I do. And when it comes to the issue of counseling, every word needs to be very, very conscious. It needs to have the right meaning, and it's something that should be taken very, very carefully. And it's one of the problems, in this day and age, we don't have a great source for counseling. The Bible is the best. And second to that, if you need a third party, probably your pastor. And that's one of the reasons why having a good pastor and a good church is really important. You can't trust the psychology of the day. I remember, it's kind of a side point, but Titus, when he was like in, fourth grade or something, wasn't doing well in school. And so I took the day off, it was my birthday, and I went in to talk with my wife, to talk to the teacher. And so we're talking to the teacher, and there was this, I don't remember what she was probably a counselor or something. And she said, she was there too, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And they were like, okay, well, here's what we want to do. We want to test Titus, and here's our plan, and we want to give him the IQ test, and it will be administered by the school psychologist. I've told this story, but it's been a while. And I was like, okay, well, the plan itself is maybe okay, but I don't want the school psychologist to have anything to do with my son. So wasn't that blunt, but I said, I don't want this done by the psychologist. Like, oh, well, it has to be done by the psychologist. Like, why? An IQ test is just a test. And so then we had a discussion. That was fun. I remember her saying, so you're calling our psychologist a quack? And I said, no, I'm calling all psychologists quacks. At that point, I think she got really angry at me. But I was pretty irritated too, because I wasn't going in there to talk about psychologists. I was going in there to talk about my son's grades and how we could get them better. In short, they wanted to put him in special ed. He didn't need to go into special ed. Titus isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. I'm sure he would admit that. But he's not stupid. He's not retarded or mentally deficient or, whatever word that they use today. He just would never ask questions because he was shy. He's still very much like that in many ways. So, but they get more money if they get kids in special ed. If you look at things with schools and you wonder why things are this way now, a lot of it revolves around money. They bribe kids to go to school. That's why they have movies and pizza parties and things like that now that they never had when I was a kid. It's very frustrating. All right. So verse 6 down to verse 12. I'm sorry, that's not right. I'm not sure where I did that. All right, so verse 6. Most men will proclaim everyone his goodness, but a faithful man who can find? The just man walketh in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. You know, we see good men, good, quote unquote, people who are care about stuff and they do their best and they serve their country, they fight and die. I think those are some of the, the most inspiring. One of the examples I want to give you is Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart, which were involved in the Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia. And I was a teenager when this happened. But just to give you a little bit of a history lesson, we had some Delta Force and Army Rangers in Somalia to try to capture Adid, who was a warlord, and he was interfering with shipments of food aid. And so the UN and the Clinton administration decided they should capture him. So they were trying to capture him, and that wasn't going very well. And they finally got some information on some of his lieutenants, and so they sent some people in to capture him. But in the process, some things went wrong. A guy fell off of a fast rope, and then one of the support Blackhawks got shot down. By the way, that had something to do with, I think Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda. They developed that process of shooting down our helicopters through RPG swarms. Anyway, 2 Blackhawks got shot down. The second Blackhawk got shot down, and Michael Durant was the only survivor from that Blackhawk, but he only survived because 2 Delta Force snipers insisted on going down to protect his aircraft. They were refused by their command several times. They just kept asking. And they knew, as certainly as they could know something, that they would die if they went down there. There were too many bad guys. They didn't have enough bullets. So they went, but they were allowed to go down, and their helicopter tried to support them as best they could. Then it got shot, and it had to go crash land somewhere else. And those guys fought to the death to protect this guy. And, that is a faithful man, as worldly as good as this world gets. But our example in the Bible is Jesus, obviously. He died for the sinner, not just for the good man. You probably wouldn't have gotten those Delta Force snipers to go down and die for Osama bin Laden. That's just nuts. But that's, effectively what Jesus did, because he died for sinners. Most men will proclaim everyone his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find. So you got guys like Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart, and then you got our current vice presidential nominee on the Democratic ticket. Who I learned a new term yesterday. It's called Blue Falcon. You heard that term, Kelly? Yeah, it's basically, a weasel. Somebody who gets out of something. Good. Glad I'm not going over your head. Yeah, Blue Falcon was totally new to me. So it sounds more like a chicken. But anyway, this guy they were given a warning, a notification that they were going to go to Iraq. He got out of the military before they went. So, and that's kind of what we get, because that's normal man's actions. The Democrats are confused at why this is a problem.
And then he lied about it.
Yes. He lied about that. He lied about several different things. He lied about his rank. Democrats are confused because they're like, well, he served for 24 years. Yeah, but if you're a weasel at the end, what difference does it make? You've undone everything. And it's kind of why, like, as a Christian, we're supposed to, run the race. It's just, for some reason, I don't know if it's we get lazy or we get tired or just the attacks of the devil increase or what, but people late in life tend to fade. And so, I love our people here who are older, who, you know what? You're the ones who pray really hard all the time. And, I pray for people. I'm on the prayer thing, and when I get those things, I pray for them, and I pray for Kelly's stuff and whatnot. But I love the people, our elders, let's just call them that. I love our elders that are able to get a text and just start praying and pray very fervently. That is a blessing that we have in this church. So a just man walketh in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. I wrote down how. How are the children blessed? Well, they're blessed in a lot of ways. In some ways, you can't even delineate how you're blessed because you don't even consciously realize it. Your parents have taught you things that, your father especially, that you don't even, you're not even conscious that you've learned these things. But I think of my dad and some of the things he did and how he always said, how he would always say, I'm not going to sell my soul for something to get money. And money was a great obsession to me because even though we lived not as poor people, we were effectively poor. We qualified for free lunches, at school at least. I don't know if we would have qualified for welfare or not, but in this day and age, we definitely would have. But my dad never would have done that because it was his job to provide. But, our actions speak louder than words. It's a tough thing because as a parent, you make mistakes. And I tell my kids, listen, just because I screw up on something or I make a mistake, it doesn't make what I say untrue. I know it damages it. I know it damages my testimony, and it gives your children cause to blaspheme because you fail. And that's sad, but it's not completely avoidable. We need to show our children that we fear the Lord. I think that's really one of the best things that we can do. And because my dad had his focus on eternal things, I realized that the not having butter or milk wasn't what mattered. I realized that, and those are important to me. To this day, milk and butter, I'm cranky if we don't have those. Because those are staples, right? You need your staples. You always have your staples. Maybe don't have your steak, but you have staples. That's what a staple is. And so I knew that my dad feared the Lord, even though he never, I don't know that he ever said, I need to fear the Lord or anything. I'm debating if I should get into this next section. I'll go ahead and start. Verse 8, a king that sitteth in the throne of judgment scattereth away all evil with his eyes. Who can say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin? Diverse weights and diverse measures, both of them are alike abomination to the Lord. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord made even both of them. So a king scattereth away all evil with his eyes. At least that's what they should do, and that's how Christ the King will be during the millennial kingdom. The light of day is the best disinfectant. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it's a good little truism. You know, once you expose things to the light and where people can see them, we would call that transparency. I remember Obama ran under transparency. Every politician is going to be transparent until they get elected. And then something happens. Something happens, and they stop being transparent. I don't know exactly what. There's some good speculation out there, but it's become incredibly obvious, especially the kind of upper echelon. Even our secretary or our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who claims to be a Christian and probably is. Once he became Speaker of the House, then he changed some positions. So there's some views there, but this isn't the appropriate venue to discuss them. But transparency really does help, and that's why companies have things like audits. Audits hold you accountable, and everybody hates audits, whether they're trying to hide something or not, because, well, they're a pain. You have to provide proof that you're doing what you say you're doing. And that takes time. So even if you are doing it, it distracts from your daily work. But the people that really don't like audits are the people who are trying to get away with things. So we as Christians, I guess our version of an audit is the judgment seat of Christ. So we get to see Jesus and talk about stuff. And, good or evil, good or bad. So, and then the unsaved, they don't get to talk about, they don't get to audit. They just, monopoly terms, they go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. So that might be a flippant way of saying they're going to hell. It is, and it's probably inappropriate, but they have failed at the most basic thing, and that is, do you accept the gift of Jesus Christ? That was, I hope everybody in here has that understanding, at least. I hope we've covered that enough, because I certainly didn't when I was 22, 23. I didn't understand why. I didn't understand that unsaved people were refusing the gift, that they were being offered that gift and they were not taking it. And I finally had I asked them that question. We were doing a Bible study. I was doing a Bible study with a girl, which was really just an excuse to see her, but I did learn something in this. And so the whole refusal of the gift. So I hope that everybody in here understands that basic component. I didn't go to an independent Baptist church. I didn't have a lot of good doctrine. And even though I got a lot of good doctrine in college, it wasn't local church. So there are definitely some things that I missed. Who can say, verse 9, who can say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin? Well, nobody can say that, right? And that's a kind of a basic, fundamental thing of salvation. If you have to admit you're a sinner. And why? I saw something that said that the reason we have this pride and all this stuff, and Kelly told me this a long time ago, it's not about accepting or tolerating. Well, it's not about tolerating or even just like living along peaceably. You have to endorse, you have to support. They don't want to live side by side. Honestly, it's a lot like Muslims. I've known Muslims, you might be able to live peaceably with this one, but once they get a majority, or even a large minority, as we see in England, it's not go along, get along type mindset. They want to replace the underlying truths and the faith and religion of our society. So whether it's Islam or it's the LGBT movement, Christianity can't live alongside either of those. It must be destroyed. And so I think people are starting to figure that out. I think there's a lot more fighting, a lot more pushback. Thankfully, the past 2 years, June has not been nearly as painful. I've actually been able to forget what month it was a few times because it wasn't jammed down my throat quite as vigorously. But have no fear, or don't let your guard down. That's just temporary. I remind myself regularly, in this world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And I might have paraphrased that, so I apologize for that. But be of good cheer is something I have to remind myself of regularly, because my basic temperament is not that way. And you read the news and you read all the stuff and you see the lies, and I didn't even know what the term gaslight meant for most of my life. And now everybody in here, I would think, would know what gaslighting is, because you're being lied to on a daily basis and told that what you believe is false. And it's not even surprising anymore. So, but the nice thing is we have our truth. It's in the Bible. And it's not even our truth, it's the truth. I don't like it when people make it specific. So I apologize for saying our truth. But it's the truth. It doesn't matter whether you are saved or not. This is the truth. Amen. And it's important to remain centered on what's in the Word of God now more than ever. So with that, I will pray to dismiss. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for just helping me get through Sunday school. I just pray for those who are not able to be here today. I pray for anybody who's struggling with the smoke, that you would help them. You'll keep the fires away from here. I just pray your blessing on the services today, the song service, worship service, the teaching service. I just pray that you would be with the people who aren't able to be here and just help them to watch and want to watch online if possible, Lord. And I just thank you again for just how you bless us so much, Lord.